Welcome students to another lecture in the series. Today is the last topic from your unit 1. After this we will be beginning with unit 2. But it is a very important topic and you can see a question many a times from this particular topic. It is also an important concept from Income Tax Act 1961. Now the topic is incomes fully exempted from tax and they are given in section 10. Here a very different type of question appears in exam. First of all, you should know that we are studying the incomes on which tax is not applicable, the incomes which are not being taxed, the incomes which are exempted from tax, and you are not supposed to pay any tax on those incomes. Okay. And when you would see the section 10 in various books or online, you will find that there are a number of more than 20 items given in the incomes fully exempted from tax. So in that situation, it becomes difficult for the students to identify that which one to learn, which one not to learn. See, I'll give you a shortcut here. First, that you need to remember minimum of 10 to 15 items which are existing under this fully exempted incomes of section 10. Because many a times a question has appeared that you need to list out the 10 fully exempted incomes. Very simple question. And further, you need to study the various important incomes which are fully exempted, like agricultural income, because short notes can come on them, a detailed question can be asked on them. So for that purpose you need to have the details of certain incomes which are fully exempted. Let us begin. For providing relief to taxpayers from payment of tax, income tax law, basically your Income Tax Act 1961, has provisions which contain the concept of exemptions and deductions. So it is the right time. Let us differentiate that what do we mean by exemptions and deductions here. Let us see. Exempted income means the income which is not at all charged to any taxes while calculating the gross total income. Whereas deduction means the amount which needs to be included in the income first, and then it is allowed for deduction in full or in part on the fulfillment of certain conditions only. So if we differentiate these two in short, exempted incomes are not part of your GTI, whereas deductions are part of your income, your gross total income. Exempted incomes are not considered for tax purpose. Deductions are kept as a part of your income, and then certain conditions are checked at a later stage. If the conditions are being fulfilled, maybe 100%, maybe in full, or maybe in part. So accordingly the deductions are given. Under section 10, 10AA, 11, 12, 12A, 13, 13A of the Income Tax Act, various incomes are there, items of incomes are there which are exempt from tax. And here we will be linking the important ones from section 10. Therefore, these incomes shall not be included in the total income of an assessee, and provides the assessee to prove that a particular item of income is exempt and fall within a particular clause. Now let us see certain the items which are exempted under section 10. First is, like, I will not go in this detail because I have given a whole video lecture on agricultural income. So section 10 subsection 1 gives you the idea of agricultural income, and it is defined in section 2 1A of Income Tax Act 1961, but the exemption is provided under section 10 subsection 1A. Agricultural income is exempted from tax. Now let us see, as per the section 2 subsection 1A, what agricultural income is. It can be any rent or revenue which is derived from land which is situated in India and is used for agricultural purposes. It can be any income which is derived from the land by agricultural operations, which may even include the processing of the agricultural produce in order to make it fit for the market or for the purpose of sale. Okay, and it can be any income which is attributable to a farmhouse subject to the satisfaction of certain conditions. This we have all already studied in the previous lecture of agricultural income. At this point, you need to remember that agricultural income under section 10 subsection 1 is a fully exempted income. Okay, under the list, the first is learnt, I suppose. Now let us move to the next. Amount received by a member of the HUF. Section 10 subsection 2 is defining it. Which amount we are talking about? Because the amount which is received out of the family income, or in case of a impartible state, because you cannot separate it. So the amount received out of the income of family estate by any member of the HUF is exempt from tax in the hands of that particular member. Why? Because that income has already been taxed in the hand of the HUF. So double taxation is not applicable. So for that reason, because the income has already been taxed in the hand of HUF, so the member receiving it again will not be liable to pay any tax. Third, the share of profit received by a partner from the firm, and the section for it is section 10 subsection 2a. Here we are talking about the share of profit which is received by a partner from a firm, like in his own hand. Further, in this, the share received by a partner of a LLP, that is limited liability partnership, from that particular firm will be exempt from tax in the hands of such partner. And this exemption is limited only to that particular share of profit, and it does not apply to the interest on capital or remuneration which is received by the partner from the firm. That particular share of profit only. Why? The same concept, because it has already been taxed in the hands of the firm, so it will not again be taxed in the hand of the partner. Next, we have certain interests which are received by non-residents. Now let us have a look like what kind of interests can be. Section 10 subsection 4. Okay, remember the sections while making the list. That would help you to score better marks. In this, we have two parts that as per section 10 subsection 4, first part, in case of a non-resident, any income by way of interest on certain notified securities or bonds, including income by way of premium on the redemption of such bonds, is exempt from tax. And in the second part, in case of an individual, any income by way of interest on money standing to his credit in a non-resident account, means some external account in a bank in India in accordance with FEMA, that is Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999, and the rules made under therein, it's like as per the rules it is exempt from tax. So you need to remember that certain interests to non-residents as per section 10 subsection 4. You can even add, you can enhance the this heading, certain interests on securities or bonds, or so you can write like that. Next is interest on notified savings certificate. Section is section 10 4b, subsection 4b. Here, in the case of an individual being a citizen of India or a person of Indian origin, may be a non-resident, if he is receiving any income by way of interest on any notified savings certificate, which are like subscribed in convertible foreign exchange, even issued before this particular date, 1st June 2002, by central government, it is exempt from tax. Next, let's move further. LTC. You must have heard this term LTC, that is leave travel concession. This is belonging to section 10 subsection 5. An employee, Indian as well as foreign citizens, can claim exemption under this particular section of in respect of LTC. Exemption is available in respect of the value of any travel concession or assistance which is received or due to the employee from his employer. If an employee is receiving any concession on LTC from his employer, maybe even from the previous employer, some former employer, for himself and for his family members, in connection with his proceedings on leave to any place in India. Okay, and the quantity that I have given a few points here. There are three parts basically. Where the journey is performed by air, the amount of exemption will be lower of amount of economy class airfare of the national carrier by the shortest route or actual amount that is being spent, whichever is lower. Second, where the place of origin of journey and destination are connected by rail and the journey is performed by any mode of transport other than by air. Air conditioned first class rail fare by the shortest route to that particular place of destination would be counted. Third, where the place of origin and destination are not connected by rail and journeys performed by any mode of transport other than air, then the exemption would be in these two forms. If it is a recognized public transport, then lower of the first class or deluxe fare by the shortest route or the actual amount spent. You might be seeing that again and again they're talking about shortest route. See, it is up to you that you're moving from place A to place C directly, or you are moving from place A to B and then to C. So it is like, as per the government rules, the shortest route is considered under this. If no recognized public transport exists thereout, then the lower amount of air conditioned first class rail fare by the shortest route, considering as if the journey is performed by rail, or the actual amount, whichever is lower, would be considered. So these are just few conditions that you need to learn only in case you are having any short note for a leave travel concession. This again you will be studying in your income from salaries, because there also it is an important part, but it is exempted from tax. Okay, let's see next. Exemption to an individual who is not a citizen of India. Now let us see what kind of exemptions are there for the foreign citizens under this act, and the section is 10 subsection 6. Under this we have certain categories. First is the remuneration of diplomats. So in case of an individual who is not a citizen in India and he is receiving remuneration, being an official of an embassy, high commission, legation, commission or consulate, or any trade representative of a foreign state, or a member of a staff of any of the official, it is exempt from tax. If the corresponding Indian official in that foreign country enjoys the similar exemption, then only. If our Indian person in that particular foreign country is not able to enjoy that exemption, then we do not allow these. Second, the salary of a foreign employee and non-resident member of a crew. Here you can see the subsections for the points are mentioned. It is from point 2, it is from point 6 and 8 and 6 here. Let us see. The remuneration which is received by a foreign national as an employee of some foreign enterprise for the services rendered by him during his stay in India is exempt from tax, but certain conditions are there that need to be fulfilled. First under this is that foreign enterprise must not be engaged in any trade or any business in India. So it should not be a business enterprise. Okay, let us see further. Then his stay in India does not exceed the aggregate period of 90 days in that particular year, because then it would be creating question on his residential status. So such remuneration is not liable to be deducted from the income of the employer. If these three conditions are there, then it can be considered. Then as per further next parts, then any salary which is received by or due to a non-resident foreign national for services which are rendered in connection with his employment on a foreign ship, where his total stay in India does not exceed an aggregate of 90 days in the year, it is exempt from tax. In that particular year, it can be exempted from tax if these conditions are being met. Then you can have more foreign citizens, like you can remuneration received by a foreign trainee is also exempt from tax, but it again has certain conditions. The remuneration which is received by a foreign trainee as an employee of a foreign government only, but he is staying in India in connection with this training in any establishment or office or in any undertaking which is owned by the government, or any company owned by the central government or any state government, any company which is a subsidiary of a company which is referred in the first 2 points, any corporation which is established by or under a central state or a provincial act, any cooperative society which is wholly financed by central government or a state government. So it needs to be a government initiative basically. So in that situation, the remuneration of the foreign trainee would be exempted from tax. We have further one more category here I have mentioned. Tax paid on behalf of a foreign company which is deriving income by way of royalty or fees for some technical services. See, the tax which is paid by the central government or state government or an Indian concern on behalf of the foreign company which is deriving income by way of royalty or fees for technical services. in pursuance of an agreement which is made after this particular date, 31st March 1976, but before June 2002, is exempt from tax in the hands of the foreign company, provided that such agreement is in accordance with the industrial policy of the Indian government and is approved by the central government. Then another income which is fully exempted from tax, the allowances and perquisites to government employee outside India. If government has allowed and posted them outside India for certain purposes, then the allowances and perquisites which are received by these employees. And the section for this is sections and subsection 7. If you see, I have kept them in serial for you to learn and make it easy to carry to your exam. See, any allowances or perquisites which are paid or allowed to any such person who is posted outside India by government to a citizen of India for rendering the services outside India is exempt from tax. Let us see another. Income of foreign government employee under Cooperative Technical Assistance Program. Subsection is 8 here. Remuneration which is received directly or indirectly by an individual from the foreign government in connection with some cooperative technical assistance program and a project which is running in accordance with an agreement which is entered into by the central government or that particular foreign government from whom the person is receiving the remuneration. It is exempt from tax. Further, the exemption is available in respect of any other income of such individual which may be accruing or arising outside India and is deemed to accrue and arise in India, is not deemed to accrue and arise in India, provided such individual is required to pay income tax or social security tax to the foreign government. Then we have death cum retirement gratuity which is received by government servants only. Section 10 subsection 10. The amount of any death, I'll repeat this again that you will be reading and understanding these clauses again under the head income from salary, because there they will come in detail. Here I've just given you the outline. Okay, the amount of any death cum retirement gratuity received by a government employee. Here you might not know the meaning of gratuity. It is a retirement benefit which an employee gets for his continuous service, minimum of 5 years. Then he can have the gratuity fund. Here government refers to a central government, state government or any local authority. In that situation it is exempt from tax. Further, the gratuity received by a non-government employee, but in that situation only it will be exempt from tax if the payment is received under the Gratuity Act 1972. So exemption of gratuity in case of employees covered by the Payment of Gratuity Act 1972. Under these three conditions, whichever would be the lowest, will be exempted from tax. 15 days salary and years of service. Suppose if an employee has served for 35 years, so his last drawn salary, 15 days last drawn salary into the number of services, or number of years of service. Then maximum amount up to 10 lakh gratuity actually received. So whichever is lower would be exempted from tax. Then gratuity which is received by a non-government employee which is not covered by Payment of Gratuity Act. Here the conditions get bit changed. See, this thing remains the same, 10 lakh and gratuity actually received, but here it is bit different, that half month salary for each completed year of service, that is the average salary into half of the completed years of services is taken. So whichever is lower of these three is considered for exemption. Then comes pension under section 10 subsection 10A. Any commuted pension means any accumulated pension in lieu of the monthly pension. Pension is of actually two types, commuted and uncommuted. In that situation, commuted pension is the one which you get in a lump sum amount, and the other form of pension is the one which you obtain in on monthly basis in installments till the time you live. So any commuted pension, that is accumulated pension in place of any monthly pension which is received by a government employee, is fully exempted from tax. If he is interested in taking the whole amount in one go, then it is exempted from tax. Otherwise he needs to pay a lot of tax. Exemption is available only in respect of commuted pension, and it is not available in case of uncommuted pension, monthly pension के case में it is not available. Exemption in respect of commuted pension in case of a non-government employee will be as follows. Let us see what are the conditions here. If the employee receives gratuity, then 1/3 of the full value of the commuted pension will be exempt. Whatsoever amount he is getting, the 1/3 would be exempt under income tax. If the employee does not receive gratuity, then 1/2 of full value of the commuted pension will be exempt, because he will be receiving certain exemption under gratuity also. No? If he does not receive gratuity, then half is considered as exempted, otherwise 1/3 is considered as exempted from tax. Let us see further. Now let us see leave salary. Now the question here is that what is leave salary, leave encashment? See, there are certain number of leaves which are given to every employee in the form of casual leave and other forms of leave. So in that situation, if the employee is highly dedicated and if he is not taking those leaves, then at the end, means at the time of his retirement, he can avail the leave encashment. He can encash the amount of the leave. As per section 10, subsection 10AA, leave encashment by a government employee at the time of retirement, whether on superannuation or otherwise, is exempt from tax. In the hands of non-government employee, exemption would be the least of the 4 conditions given here. Under these 4 conditions, whichever would be the lowest will be exempted. The period of earned leave standing to the credit of the employee's account at the time of retirement into the average monthly salary. Then average monthly salary into 10, whichever would be the lower, maximum amount of 3 lakhs, and leave encashment which is actually received by the employee. Whichever would be the lowest would be exempt from tax. Then exemption in respect of the amount which is received from various provident funds. Here the section is section 10, subsection 11 and 12, both are applicable. I have given this in the form of tables. Let us have a look to them in bit detail. First, if the provident, because provident funds are various types, if it is a statutory provident fund, then in that case, employer's contribution to such fund is not treated as income of the employee. The interest that he is receiving credited to such fund is again exempt in the hands of the employee. The amount received at the time of termination, means when he is getting retired. So lump sum amount received from such fund at the time of termination is again exempted from tax. So it is best to have this kind of a statutory provident fund because it is having almost full exemption. The second is recognized provident fund. Here the employee's contribution to such fund up to 12% of the salary is not treated as income. Further, interest part, interest which is credited to such fund up to 9.5% per annum is exempt in the hands of the employee, and the interest in excess of that would be charged in the charged to tax in the hands of the employee. Only till 9.5% is allowed to be exempted. And the amount which is received at the time of retirement, at the time of termination, if certain conditions are satisfied, then lump sum amount received from such fund at the time of termination is exempt from the employees. The details regarding the further conditions and all that which are applicable, you will be studying that at the time in the unit 2 in the head income from salaries. Then unrecognized provident fund, in that situation employer's contribution to such fund is not treated as income of the employee, and interest credited to such fund is again exempt in the hands of the employee, and the amount which is received at the time of termination is having certain parts, certain conditions, that if it is employer's contribution and the interest thereto and the other things are considered. If it is a PPF, that is public provident fund, which is opened by an employee himself on his name, so contribution of employers do not contribute to such fund. Interest credited to such fund is exempt from tax, and the lump sum amount which is received from such fund at the time of termination, means at the time of retirement of service, is also exempt from tax. I have listed, this is not an exhaustive list, I'm telling you, this is a suggestive list. So you should learn certain items from the list of incomes which are received from income tax. Thank you. Take care.